On the 14th of July 1930, at around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a tall man in his early 70s, very handsome, was seen climbing atop the hill somewhere outside place.The to meet another person. This second person is characterized by his gregarious laugh and his long, wild, white, unruly ears, which marks his characteristic. The two of them met at a house. They sat in an armchair, and a torrent of talks and thoughts flowed across, which we explore on what we called On the Nature of Reality. It is important in order to mark the scientific and philosophical evolutions of this century. Yes, you are very right. We are talking about the meeting of Rabindranath Tagore and Albert Einstein. And what we discuss today is about their conversation. Very good day, and my name is Shaunak, and I am speaking today from Physics for Students. But although today we won't be speaking about much of physics and mathematics, but today we will be talking more about what we call is the nature of reality and the discussion and thoughts which happened between Tagore and Einstein. Well, first, let me tell you what is the objective of the program. In general, when this type of conversation happens, especially when we talk about the philosophical discussions between any two great people, we always have a natural tendency to tell which is right, which is wrong. Whether Tagore's conversations or philosophical elucidations are right, or whether that of Einstein's. No. The basic objective of this program, which I'm trying to bring forward to the viewers, is that we are not in a position to make what is right, what is wrong. We are just going to see, or we are just going to look forward the exact nature of the discussion which happened between Tagore and Einstein. First. Second is that I am going to analyze and give a philosophical interpretation, that's it, between those talks. Who is right, who is wrong, who says that nature and God and individual is dependent. That is totally up to the viewers. You decide whatever the way you want. So I would be very clear before we start in this program. Our objective is not to determine which is right, which is wrong, who is more religious and who is not. It is just bringing out the crux of the discussion between Tagore and Einstein, which I generally call as a celestial conjunction, a meeting between a poet and a scientist. The second part of this conversation, which I noted, as I have already written quite a comprehensive article on the website Physics for Students, is that there has been different types of opinion about the discussion, about the flow of discussion. Certain words, certain writings, certain statements which are found always in a dilemma. I mean to say, some websites, etc., say this is being told. Some websites and books tells this is being told. So what we are going to do is that we are going to take the authentic one, which is called The Religion of Man. The Religion of Man, which is written by Rabindranath Tagore himself and which was published later on by Vishwa Bharati. So we will take forward all those discourses and the conversation which is published by Vishwa Bharati in The Religion of Man. I have consulted many websites, many books, especially my sincere thanks to Partho Ghosh's book on the nature of reality, the discussion between Tagore and Einstein. So first of all, this would be the objective. First of all, not to decide on what is right, what is wrong. Second would be not to judge on the authenticity. So I would be considering Religion of Man. If you have read Religion of Man, which is basically a collection of Hibbert Lectures of Rabindranath Tagore, at the end of this book, you will find that there is a discussion which is written between Tagore and Einstein. Just a point of note, which I would like to tell you before we jump into the philosophical discussion. The first conversation which took place between Tagore and Einstein was in 1930. The second one took place around in August 1930 at Mendel Hall, where Tagore and Einstein met through a common friend called Mr. Mendel. And it actually ensued into a lot of philosophical discussions, especially in music, which I am planning to bring it in the second part. So the first took place at Einstein's home, somewhere outskirts in the outskirts of Berlin in Potsdam, which is in 1930, and the second one took place at Mendel Hall. Also very important is that the recording of this lecture, particularly of Tagore and Einstein, which you're talking today, actually is made by two personalities. One is Dmitry Marionov, son-in-law of Albert Einstein, and second by the great renowned Bengali critic, scholar, and I would say philosopher Omyo Chakraborty. I think you know about Omyo Chakraborty. He has been appointed to travel with Rabindranath Tagore as well as with Mahatma Gandhi to write down those discourses, to write down those philosophical and discussions which took place. So, and you can later read how great was Omyo Chakraborty, and he has been, teaching. He was teaching, born in Srirampur, and he was teaching comparative literature around the globe, especially in England and other areas, for almost more than a decade. So, after laying the foundation of the mode of today's program, that is the discussions between Einstein and Tagore, I think it is the right time to, jump into what actually happened during that time. I'm trying to divide this entire program into two parts so that, the viewers get the time as well as the, what I would say, reflective ideas, and later can think on what actually is Einstein-Tagore's conversation. So we are talking about the first conversation, which has been in 1930. And it took place at Einstein's house at Caputh near Potsdam. And this is recorded by Dmitry Marionov and Omyo Chakraborty. At the time when Tagore and Einstein met each other, both of them have won Nobel Prizes. Einstein have already won the Nobel Prize for his eternal contribution in science in terms of Brownian motion and general theory of relativity. Tagore has already won the Nobel Prize for his astounding works in literature, especially Gitanjali. But what you will see that when there has been this kind of a conversation and this kind of a, I would say, talk in different websites and sources, that there was a disparity in terms of thought. I mean to say, Tagore was saying something which Einstein didn't understood, and Einstein was saying something which the great poet cannot understand during that time. But actually the fact is no. First of all, I would like to tell you what is the background of this conversation. It was during this time that Einstein was too much, I won't say bored, but too much disturbed by the general life of his, too much of pressure, a lot of people coming and meeting. And it was during this time that he called upon a German architect and decided to, design a house on the outskirts of Berlin where nobody would disturb him. And that is why we call the first one as Far from the Madding Crowd. So he really wanted to move away from the madding crowd and just wanted to rest and have his own time. So as, typically Einstein puts it here, the sailing ship, the distant view, the lonely walks in autumn, the relative silence, it's a paradise. So these are exactly the words which Einstein told when he was resting at his rest house. Actually, the fact is that there might be a disparity between the thoughts of Tagore and Einstein, but we are not going to look forward. However, Tagore, in his book, Religion of Man, had put forward this. His mastery of English, I mean to say, Einstein's mastery of English is not enough for conversation, and I cannot speak German. The interpreter between us must have had a not too easy task. So in Bengali, it is written in a book which is called Ekti Oshompurno Songlap. Ekti Oshompurno Songlap. In English, you can call it an incomplete conversation, but this is up to you to decide whether it was incomplete or whether they really understood amongst each other. Well, the first line which Tagore speaks, again, there is a controversy whether this line was actually uttered or it was actually told by Tagore. But anyway, it is worth reading and worth reflecting on the ideas. Tagore said, "You have been busy hunting down with mathematics the two ancient entities, time and space, while I have been lecturing in the country on the eternal world of man, the universe of reality." This is the first line which Tagore told, although some books tell it was not. But anyhow, it is good to think on that. Now, what Tagore has been telling, you have been busy, pointing to Einstein, hunting down with mathematics the two ancient entities of science, entities, time and space, while I have been lecturing in the country on the eternal nature of man. When he was telling that it is the eternal world of man, he was actually trying to point out on the Hibbert Lectures, which he gave at Oxford on the general nature of man. And you will see that Tagore has himself, he has written that I was so much, I would say, pregnant with the ideas which I delivered on the Hibbert Lectures. So he's actually referring to the Hibbert Lectures. Now, what does he mean by hunting down two ancient entities, time and space? Well, actually, it is during this time, if you have read across the development of science and see that by this time, Tagore has actually, Einstein has actually unified the concept of time and space together into what we call space-time continuum. And it was necessary. I am not going to tell too much about the scientific reason behind that, but let us understand that it was really necessary because starting from Descartes' time, moving up to Newton, Leibniz, etc., space and time was different, right? Space was space, time was time. But as we went through the nature of reality and we studied Einstein's special theory of relativity, which later migrated into his great singular work of general theory of relativity, we found that if we find time to be different and if we find space to be different, it would become very difficult to make certain equations work in their own way. So space would have been different, time would have been different. It would have been very difficult to make those equations work out, especially in general theory of relativity, when we are not, although I would like to mention that general theory of relativity is not about anything related to relativity, right? It is actually a theory or a science of geometry where we are picking up, random spaces in around the manifold, and we are trying to define the curvature or anything of the physics of that particular point. So general theory of relativity, when we went together, what we found is that space and time, if it is lumped up together in what we call space-time continuum, then certain equation, certain physics works really well. So that is the reason Einstein, made it together as what we call space-time continuum. Otherwise, moving from Euclidean to non-Euclidean, moving from Newtonian mechanics into relativity, it would not have been possible. So that is the reason Tagore here says that you have been the two ancient entities, time and space. Mark his words, ancient entities. That means Tagore by that time, although being a poet, he already realized that starting from Descartes or even prior to that, time and space have been two entities. And he has been lecturing Hibbert Lectures across Oxford. Now Einstein says, do you believe in the divine isolated from the world? Do you believe in the divine isolated from the world? So what is happening now is that for Einstein being a scientist, and although he has unified space-time into space-time, yet he thinks that the divine is out somewhere, and he says divine isolated from the world. The world means this world where he is talking, we are talking, the talk of the world of relativity, the world of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, the world of general relativity, right? So he's telling that, do you think that the divine is somewhere out there and world is out here where we are talking? Now, if you go into Hindu scriptures and science of Hinduism, you will find there is something which is called a Dvaita and something which is called an Advaita. So Advaita is something which Albert Einstein is speaking, that the divine is out there and the world is out here. So he asks this question to Tagore, that do you believe the divine is isolated from the world? So a perfect division, an isolation between the divine and the current world, which we are talking about. Tagore replies, not isolated. Not isolated. The infinite personality of man comprehends the universe. The infinite personality of man comprehends the universe. There cannot be anything that cannot be subsumed by the human personality, and this proves that the truth of the universe is human truth. He further speaks, I have taken a scientific fact to explain this. Matter is composed of protons and electrons with gaps between them, but matter may seem to be solid. Similarly, humanity is composed of individuals, yet they have their interconnection of human relationships, which gives living solidarity to man's world. The entire universe is linked up with us in similar manner. It is a human universe. I have pursued this thought through art, literature, and the religious consciousness of man. This was Tagore's reply, that it is not isolated. The infinite personality of man comprehends the universe. There cannot be anything that cannot be subsumed by the human personality. Now, this is something which is very important, as he uses the word subsumed. Right. Let us see what Einstein replies on that. There are two different conceptions about the nature of the universe. The world as a unity dependent on humanity, and the world as a reality independent of the human factor. Tagore says, when our universe is in harmony with man, the eternal, we know it as truth. We feel it as beauty. Einstein replies, this is purely human conception of the universe. Okay, so this has been, this is the first level of talk, or I would say few talks which took place. So what you will see that, first of all, the word subsume. Now, if you go back to dictionary and try to explore this word, what do we mean by the word subsume? You will say, which accumulates and assimilates small things. Right. So let us go back to Tagore, what he told, that the infinite personality of man comprehends the universe. There cannot be anything that cannot be subsumed by the human personality. Now, when we talk of, subsuming of human personality, that means Tagore doesn't believe what Einstein believes. That means he believes that the entire nature of humanity is what is important. Human personality, or the human world, is which is subsuming, or which is taking together the entire world, which Einstein thinks to be somewhere out there and in here. Also, he points out another important thing, one superpersonal being, right? So he believes in God, quite obvious, and he believes that this is one superpersonal being through which the assimilation of thought takes place. Let me go back to that. He says that this proves that the truth of the universe is human truth. That means the truth of the universe, which Einstein is speaking to be different, the truth of this particular universe is in here, and that is the human truth. So human truth and universe are not separate with each other, right? It is not separate with each other, and he says that there cannot be anything. That means it is impossible to have anything other than human personality that cannot be subsumed by the human personality. That means he thinks human personality to be at the top. So ultimately, it is all about human personality, which is subsuming everything, and that is the truth. And because he is facing Albert Einstein, he gives a very common example by using neutrons and protons. Remember, during that time, quark was not discovered. So he says that just because there is a gap between these two neutrons and protons, similarly, humanity is composed of individuals, yet they have an interconnection of human relationships. And this gives solidarity to humans' world. So because matter, as we know, is composed of electrons and protons, although there is a gap between them, yet the matter seems to be solid. So are human beings, although they are composed of individuals, that means I, you, everybody, they are individuals, yet their connection, yet they have their connection of human relationships, and he believes in that, and he is, I would say, preaching or teaching through his work of art, music, and everything. Now here I would like to make another important point, that because he believes that humanity is above all, and it is the human world which actually subsumes everything, and that is where the entire, I would say, the divine or everything is located. The lamentation that I have not been able to understand God, or I have not been able to perceive God, is also there. So I would like to say one important line of Tagore's poem, which in Bengali says, Tumi robe nirobe hridaye momo. Tumi robe nirobe hridaye momo. So in English you can call it, you will stay silently in my heart, you will stay silently like the quiet placid night of the full moon. Nibiro nibrito purnima nishithini shamo. Nibiro nibrito purnima nishithini shamo. You will stay silently like the quiet placid night of the full moon. That means because Tagore believes that it is the human world or humanity which subsumes the entire world, that is why he always feels that I have not been able to see God, although God lies within me, it is not out there. You see that there is the similarity which we are talking about right now. Tumi robe ni robe, you will stay silently in my heart. So what Tagore is telling is about spiritualism or divinity or about God, but he tells not out there, it is in here within my heart. You will stay silently in my heart. So this actually speaks, we start speaking of philosophical interpretation of Tagore. Now here Einstein says, a universe that is independent of humanity, a universe that is dependent on humanity. Right, so there are two thoughts, that universe which is independent of humanity, that means this universe, humanity is out there somewhere, it is independent. So it is moving, I am moving. And a university that is dependent on humanity, that means what we do as human, the universe is dependent on that. Now here we would also like to say that the interpretation of Tagore in terms of what Einstein has told is that God is not a strict person. I mean to say, it is not that God will have a stick in his hand and will say what you're doing, right, wrong, I will punish you, this, that, all those things. So that actually brings up to the next point of subsuming human thoughts, which Tagore says, Tai tomar anando amar por, tumi tai eshecho niche, amay noine tribhuvaneshwar, tomar prem hoto je miche. Thus, I am telling what W.B. Yeats has translated in Gitanjali. Thus it is that thy joy in me is so full. Thus it is that thou hast come down to me. O thou Lord of all the heavens, where would be thou love if I were not? Where would be thou love if I were not? So what I'm trying to tell is that all through these lines of Tagore, of his songs, etc., Tai tomar anando amar por, tumi tai eshecho niche, amay noile tribhuvaneshwar, tomar prem hoto je miche. That means, for me, your love is true, not the other way round, right? So here he says, where would thy love if I were not, right? So it is all dependent on human personality, what Tagore tells, that it is just for me that your love is true. Think of the type of philosophy that is perpetrating in Tagore's thought. Later, when we will go through the series of talks, we will also see that Tagore has told what we call truth lies in the rational harmony between the subjective and objective aspects of reality, both of which belongs to the superpersonal man. Now, this is something which we will obviously explore. who know philosophy and you know what is subjective and objective reality. He says that it is a rational. This is a rational harmony between the two. So subjective is something which is too subjective, objective where we really see and things. But Tagore says that what we call truth, if our conversation, for example, in YouTube, this is truth, then what we call truth lies in the rational harmony between the subject and objective reality, aspects of reality. And these, both of them, belongs to the superpersonal man. We move on to the second part of Tagore and Einstein's discussion. But Tagore says that there can be no other conception. The world is human world. The scientific view of it is also that of scientific man. There is some standard of reason and enjoyment which it gives it truth. The standard of the eternal man whose experiences are through our experiences. Einstein says, this is realization of human entity. Tagore says, yes, one eternal entity. We have to realize it through our emotions and activities. We realize the supreme man who has no individual limitations through our limitations. Science is concerned with that which is not confined to individuals. It is the impersonal human world of truths. Religion realizes these truths and links them up with our deeper needs. Our individual consciousness of truth gains universal significance. Religion applies values to truth, and we know this truth as good through our own harmony with it. Einstein says, truth then, or beauty, is not independent of man. Tagore says, no. Einstein further says, if there would be no human beings anymore, the Apollo of Belvedere would no longer be beautiful. Tagore says, no. Einstein, I agreed with regard to this conception of beauty, but not with regard to truth. Tagore, why not? Truth is realized through man. Einstein, I cannot prove that my conception is right, but that is my religion. Now, you see that when we talk of this part of the conversation, Tagore says that there cannot be any other conception other than human world, which we have seen through words like Tai Tomar Anando Amar Por and Tumi Robe Nirobis. That means Tagore propounds this idea that divinity and world or isolation is not possible. It is only through, it cannot be any other conception, it is only through the world is a human world. That means it is humanity, it is the human world which decides, and that is the truth which Tagore believes. Now you see, he says that scientific view of it is also that of a scientific man. That means, for example, if we talk of special theory of relativity or general theory or any other scientific experimental proof from hypothesis when we move to scientific truths, it is actually done through human beings. That means if I am experimenting through my hand, I have got a device out there and I am making a kind of an experimentation, who is perceiving the experimentation? It is me, and I am a human being. So whatever I am listening through my ears, whatever I am perceiving through my senses and through my eyes, it is that truth which I am perceiving. And because it is I as a human being, so that is why Tagore says the scientific view of it is also that of a scientific man. Now, I don't want to go too much into further interpretations. If you have read the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, right, you will find that there is some kind of a similarity between what Copenhagen interpretation tells and what we tell. The collapse of the wave function. Those who are science students, they can actually have a thought and you can later look into it and you can find it further. So what I'm trying to do in this part, I'm trying to tell you that as humans, this is a realization of human entity. Now see what Einstein tells, that this is basically a realization of human entity, and Tagore objects telling that yes, one eternal unity. Only one eternal unity. That means again, as Einstein tries to define scientifically a separation of thought. He says one eternal unity. And the most important is this. We have to realize it through our emotions and activities. What we have to realize, that divine, that superpersonal being. And he makes a wonderful comment. We realize the supreme man who has no individual limitations through our limitations. That means Tagore agrees that we have limitation, but that superpersonal man, whatever you call God or something, has got no limitation. And here I would like to tell one line of Tagore's famous song, Apon Shur, Amar Moddhe Tomar Prakash, Amon Shumodhur, Tai Ato Modhur. Shimar Maje Ashim Tumi, Bajao Apon Shur, Amar Moddhe Tomar Prakash, Tai Ato Modhur. Within the finite, you reside, O infinite, and play the song. Beautiful is thy appearance, so within me and all along. So you see, we realize the supreme man who has no individual limitations through our limitations. So the supreme man has no limitations. Shimar Maje, I stay within the limit. Ashim to me, you are infinite, and you play your song. Bajao apon shur. Amar moddhe tomar prakash tai eto modhur. Again, you see human personality. Tagore says that you manifest within me. The superpersonal man or the infinite personality, you manifest within me, and that is why it is so beautiful. So I have translated, it is in that, is thy appearance, within the finite you reside, O infinite, and play the song. Beautiful is thy appearance within me and all along. That is why he says that supreme man who has no individual limitations through our limitations. It is our limitation. Science is concerned with that which is not confined to individuals, which is called the impersonal human world of truths. Religion, he links up. Now Tagore links up science with religion. Religion realizes these truths and link them up with that means human beings' deeper needs. Okay, our individual consciousness of truth gains universal significance. Religions obviously applies values to the truth. So religion is something which really adds values and morality, and we know this truth as good through our own harmony with it. We can discuss about this paragraph much later, which will carry further elucidations, but I would like to go to the next part, what Einstein says, truth then or beauty is not independent of man. That means this truth and the beauty, see how beautiful is today's the sky and the crows around and this beautiful grass. So this truth is not independent of man. He raises a doubt. Einstein raises a doubt that is it not independent of man? Tagore says no. And here he cites a classic example. Look at Albert Einstein. Now he says that if there would be no human beings, the Apollo Belvedere would no longer be beautiful. Now those who have seen Apollo Belvedere, the architecture of the sculpture, you realize, if I today consider this wonderful morning where I have got the clouds sailing up in the sky, I have got birds chirping around, I have got this wonderful plants around me, is this not beautiful? So what would have happened if human beings are not there? If I would have shut the camera today, say for example, I shut the camera today here. Now, when I shut down the camera, the question is that this sky, these birds, these beautiful plants around me, are they not beautiful? In general to human beings, yes, it is beautiful. If I don't stay, if I close my eyes, that doesn't mean that everything goes false. Tagore says, why not? Truth is realized by man only. I remember one line which I would like to share with here. I would say the cultural equality between India and Persia has been long. If you have read about Urdu ghazals and Urdu poetry, it all came from Persia, right? And the famous Urdu poet Asadullah Khan Mirza Ghalib, in one of his ghazals, write, "Na tha kuch to khuda tha, kuch na hota to khuda hota. Na tha kuch to khuda tha, kuch na hota to khuda hota. Duboya mujhko hone mein, na hota main to kya hota." Wonderful, isn't it? So when nothing was there, God was nothing. Na tha kuch to khuda tha, kuch na hota to khuda hota. God was there, the superpersonal being. Duboya mujhko hone mein, na hota main to kya hota. What is most important is the second part. If I was not there, what would have happened? डुबोया मुझको होने में ना होता मैं तो क्या होता. If I was not there, what would have been truth? Nothing would have been truth. Further poems of Urdu and other literatures tells this, that if it is a human being, so you see that when he tells that the beauty of Apollo Belvedere, it would not have been there. Tagore says no. So I agree with regard to this concept of beauty. Okay, Tagore, as Einstein agrees that, okay, beauty would have been there. Okay, I understand that only humanity is dependent on beauty. But I do not agree with truth. Now, why he agrees with beauty, why he does not agree with truth? Can you tell me the reason? Because Apollo Belvedere, Einstein realized, is being constructed by human being. The sculpture, the color, the beauty is being developed by human being. So obviously, if human being was not there, beauty would not have existed. So he tells that I agree with regard to this conception of beauty, but not with regard to truth. It cannot realize that truth is also dependent on human beings. Tagore says, why not? Truth is realized through man. But if that means Tagore believes that if I close my eyes, if I shut down, the truth, the beauty won't be there. So truth is realized only through man. And that is why he tells that, why not? Truth is realized through man. So as you see that Einstein agreed on the fact, I agree with regard to this conception of beauty, because beauty is something, sculpture is something which human beings design and develop, but not with regard to beauty. Tagore says, why not? Truth is realized through man only. And Einstein says, I cannot prove that my conception is right, but that is my religion. So now you see, right at this moment when we are talking, it seems that Einstein is a poet, this is my interpretation, and Tagore is a scientist. Because Einstein now says that he cannot prove that my conception is right. So the proof part, Einstein cannot prove it. Although he is a Nobel laureate, he is a scientist. But he says that that is my religion. So what a wonderful comment. So he says that I cannot prove it, but that is my religion. Which is my religion? That he believes that truth is independent of humanity. Truth is different from humanity. So what we will do is that we will stop here today and we will start exploring in the second part about how truth can be realized through man. And what is the meaning of this? I cannot prove that my conception is right, but that is my religion. So we will see in the next episode what Einstein means, that what is his religion, and how Tagore can prove that truth is realized and only realized through man. Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful session making this video. So this is the first part where we would pause right now, and then we will decide on the second part of the video, which I am willing to make. Do let me know your comments, because this is the first time Physics from Students I am making a video which is not related to strict equations and mathematics and science and relativity and anything related to science. I'm trying to do, because this is also scientific for me. This is very scientific. This is more scientific than any equations that we read about. So do let me know about your comments in the comment section, and please press the bell icon so that you get all the notification from Physics for Students. Nice morning today. I just thought to make it in the early morning, because it really gives a kind of a positive vibe of interpreting Tagore and Einstein's discussion. So wish you all a very happy weekend. Stay safe and stay happy. And bye from today. We will see you in the next episode, continuing with the second part. Thank you very much and wish you all the best.